Hey fam, happy Friday to you. I hope you guys are all doing well. So, as the title suggests, I want to talk to my single parents and just give you guys some encouragement. Also, just to offer maybe a few tips on things that I did to navigate the years of being a single parent. And just wanting to take a minute to love on you guys. And you know God sees you. You are not forgotten. And he knows that it's a tough one. It's a tough job to take on raising children, and if you have to raise them alone, um, whether it's because you are divorced, which was my situation, or if your spouse may have passed away. Whatever the situation is, you know God is still there for you. And you may just feel, like you're exhausted. Um, that's a part of being a single parent. You will be tired, but God gives rest. And so I want to take you to Ephesians 6, and in verse 2, I'm going to start at verse 1, and I'm going to read down to I'm sorry, I had my TV on. I'm going to read from Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 down to verse 4. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. That is the King James Version. I usually do the Amplified. I must have switched that one over. You guys, I'm so used to having the Amplified. So let's see. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. That is, accept their guidance and discipline as his representatives. For this is right, for obedience teaches wisdom and self-discipline. Honor, esteem, value, precious your father and your mother, and be respectful to them. This is the first commandment with promise, so that it may be well with you, and that you may have a long life on the earth. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, nor by showing favoritism or indifference to any of them, but bring them up tenderly with loving kindness in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. See, that's why I like the Amplify. So that was chapter 6, verses 1 through 4 of the Amplified. And I just prefer the Amplified. It breaks it down, and it's in a more simpler version. The first several verses I read was from the King James. And so I just wanted to read that because the children have a responsibility to the parents to be obedient. And we as parents have a responsibility to our children. Fathers, whether you are a single parent father, or if you are have shared custody with your child's mother, then there is a specific request for the fathers. And I'm going to read it again, the Amplified, which is verse 4. He speaks to the fathers. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, nor by showing favoritism or indifference to any of them, but bring them up tenderly with a loving kindness in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And, I will just say, my children were 6 and 3 when I was going through my divorce or was divorced. And so I raised them and did pretty much everything I even taught my sons how to drive. And God, I will tell you, when I was going through my divorce, let me back up. When I was going through my divorce, I was living in a new state and had only been here for about 3.5, 4 years. So, I did not have any family in this state. So not only was I raising my children alone as a single parent, I also didn't have a tribe, a village rather, to help. And so my sons would see their father every other weekend and 6 weeks of the summer. And this went on until they were in high school and like around the 11th, 12th grade. And so in those early years, of being a single parent, of course, my money was tight. I wasn't making that much. I was actually going to college, working on my undergrad, and had started undergrad before the divorce. And, I just decided to not drop out of school and to finish what I started, because I knew if ever I needed that degree so that I could keep moving up. Boys eat a lot, and their clothes seem to cost more than girls. Definitely their shoes. And so I had taken all of that into consideration. And so often, I will tell you that God gave me the wisdom on how to manage all of it. And I only got child support for, I think, I want to say I only got child support for a few years. My sons were still in elementary school when my ex-husband was getting married, and I got cut off through the court system from getting child support. So not only do I, at this point now, when the child support was cut off, I had finished working on my undergrad, and I was also in the process of buying a house. Now, this is how, when I tell you God is so good, you guys, because at around the time that the child support was being cut off, I want to say it was like 4 years after the divorce, something like that. I was in the process of having a house built, and I had just finished college, my undergrad. Now, in the process of buying the house, I did not put my child support as a means of income, but it was a means of income. I didn't put it on the paperwork as a means of income, but it was a means of income for like groceries for my sons, after school care, etc. Right at the time of me closing on the house, we are now living in the house. I hadn't even paid the first mortgage. The child support was cut off, and everything was just pretty much upside down. But when I tell you, it was a part of God's ultimate master plan for me and my children. We did not skip a beat. We did not miss a meal. And I will tell you, as a single parent, it would be in your best interest to get as close to the Father as you can. And now that I am here and I have looked back over my life, I can see where God had helped me, and the Holy Spirit gave me wisdom beyond belief on how to navigate all of the storms that we went through. And my sons, as young men now, when they talk to me about their childhood, they even say, like, how did you do all of that? And they're even amazed. But it speaks to the fact that God did it. Because in my own strength and might and in my own wisdom, I know I was only a vessel. I was only obedient, but really didn't even know, because I was lukewarm. I was half in, half out. And when I say God's grace is sufficient, you guys, when I tell you, when my sons are like 6'1", 6'2", wearing a size 11, like 12 shoe, right? They got into those sizes like in middle school, and I was just like, Jesus. But my youngest son ate like for two people. He wasn't into junk food much. He was into food, like, what you cooking today, Mom? And but through all of this, I was working full time while I was going to school full time, and and I would take my sons to basketball practice, and I would be in the bleachers doing school homework. And I was just doing all of this, and a good part of it was because I was younger and I had the energy to do it. I even look back and wonder how. But I want you guys to take from this that you can do whatever you set your mind to. How did I finish college? So I live relatively close to a university. I did not go to that university, but I had paid a student to watch my kids, to pick them up from after school care, to bring them to the house, to help them with homework until I got home. And I think I used to have something in the refrigerator for them to eat for dinner. So I would sometimes the day before cook enough so that there were leftovers for her to warm up for them to have. And then I would come home around about 9 p.m. and make sure that they were in the bed and gave them a kiss and a hug. And that was all that I saw of them from that morning till that night. And it was tough because sometimes I felt guilty, but it was 2 days out of a week that I was in school at night. And in the summers when they were with their father, I would do summer school, and I would do it as a full-time student because I was trying to get out of school as fast as I could so that I didn't disrupt my children's lives more than necessary. So, and then I was in what's called a satellite school. So it's a major university that may have satellite campuses in different areas of a city. And so I was at one of the satellite schools, and there were some times that I would have my sons in one of the extra classrooms, and they would have those TVs on the stands that you could wheel to like different rooms. And I would sometimes bring DVDs were going on back then, but I would bring some of their favorite DVDs and pick them up something to eat. And, they would sit in that classroom, watch a movie, eat their food, and do like some schoolwork or something like that. And that at that time, my sons were probably around that maybe 8, 8 and 5. And so it was tough, but that's how I finished undergrad. And it was a juggling act. It was a little bit stressful, but and then during the daytime, when I was doing homework in the bleachers and doing homework, writing things out, I didn't have a tablet, didn't have a laptop, but I would write things out, and then the next day I would give the admin that was in my working area, I would give her lunch money to type up my papers. And she would definitely do it. So I would pay her sometimes like $8 or $10 to type up one of my papers. And she would type it up so fast and so perfect, better than I could do it. And then she would just email it to me because I'm sitting right at, on the other side of her desk. And I would put the finishing touches on it. And that's how I got out of undergrad school in 3.5 years. I was just being resourceful. How did I manage like buying the clothes? Now you have to remember back then they had a thing called layaway. I don't even think there's a thing called layaway anymore. But, I will tell you, God was teaching me how to be a parent. And it was also one of my prayers, like, teach me how to raise my children, how to be the parent that they need at the stage in their life, which was exactly one of the things that I prayed for. Teach me how to be the parent that they need at this time in their life. My sons are 3 years apart, and their personalities are different. So how I parented one was different than how sometimes I needed to parent the other. And so God just constantly gave me what I needed so that I could give it to my sons. And as far as paying for clothes, let's see, before summer, so in the sometimes in the winter or early spring, I'd put a layaway on that would be out by the time it got hot. And so that's how they had their summer clothes. And so then when I finished that layaway, I would start at the end of summer, I would start another layaway. That would be their winter clothes and Christmas items. And that's how I handled that. There was a shoe store that used to do 2 pairs of tennis shoes for $89.99. And at the time, my sons were in size 9 men's shoes and size 10, and then they just kept going up. So I would always go and do the 2 for $89. And that was typically still, Nikes or whatever that fell into the realm of $89.99. That's what we did. and sometimes my sons wanted a different tennis shoe that wasn't in the $89.99. And I quickly had to teach them that, those kids that have $100 and $120 shoe, they don't live in a house. They may be in an apartment. They may not, parents may be struggling. I wanted them to learn that, and no offense to anyone, what you do, but I don't believe that your children should be having $120 or $150 pair of tennis shoes. Number one, they don't have a job. Okay, you do. And so if I wasn't buying those kind of shoes, I'm the one working. So you don't get to have a $120 pair of tennis shoes and then you go jump in the mud or something like that. So I never got them caught up in what the other kids had. They were always dressed nice, and they were always in a nice shoe. I was like, you better be glad you're not at Target or Walmart. No offense, but they had to stay in the $89.99 because that gave them both a good pair of tennis shoes to wear. And then I typically may go back in another month and do another $89.99 pair of shoes. And I would keep those old tennis shoes that were, a little beat up. And when they would come home from school, those were the tennis shoes that they had to put on. If they could still fit them, then they had to wear them to go outside and play. And that's how, I kept things in a nice rotation. And then one of those pair of tennis shoes might be for the weekend when they're hanging out, when we are hanging out and having a good time. So I know layaway is not going on now, but, find ways to have a place to save money and keep putting money in it. But you need to start and plan it the season before. So I was always doing things before the need came. And sometimes that meant I would be in the room with them and I would make them try this on. And when my youngest son was in the 4th grade, he shot up. Like he had a serious growth spurt and couldn't fit any of his pants for the school at the end of the school year and leading into the summer. So my older son had some items, but now they're almost getting close to, at least in the waist, being the same size. But my older son was taller, so I took his pants that was too small in length for him. Had my youngest son try some of those on, in addition to his pants that were too short for him. So the pants that he had that were too short for him, I took those to the alterations and had them cut them and make them into shorts. He was definitely not happy about having that. He wanted brand new. But when I picked them up, I paid $40 for 6 pair of pants to be cut and hemmed. And they, when I tell you guys, would not have ever thought that they were pants before. And when I gave them to my son, he was even surprised how perfect they were because she made them the exact length that he wanted them. The threads were all the same color. It looked like they were already shorts. So that was a win. So, if you ever if you have older children and your younger children are wearing things, if the pants are a little beat up at the knees and you can either sew or a good alterator, somebody that does alterations, cut those things and make them shorts and get some more use out of them before you get rid of them. Because if the knees are worn, you're going to cut them right above the knee, right? And they're shorts, they're perfect. That worn out part is now in the trash and nobody ever knew. And now your younger child can fit those items. So be smart, be resourceful, and planning. Planning is key to doing all of this. As far as being a single parent, planning everything. And if you know that there's something that your child is going to be needing soon, have money set aside. Put things aside for, especially if they're in sports and things like that. If sports sign-ups are every month in November. Well, if it's September, if the sign-up is costing $60 and you have 2 or 3 children, you need 60 times 3 or whatever the number is, and you need to put this money aside so that you can, take care of that. Because I do believe that kids having extracurricular activities, not too many. Now, don't stress your kids out. Because some of y'all be having them in 2 and 3 things. You stress, they stress. Everybody's running all over town. They're eating in the car. Everything's crazy. I think 1, maybe 2 extracurricular activities is enough. Because you have to remember they should be doing homework. And they also need time to wind down and be at home and just breathe. And so do you. So don't overdo it with that, because if you're a single parent, you're the only one running all over town. So, and that burnout will begin to have you feeling frustrated. You're going to start being snappy and irritable with your children. That's going to have them irritable. and not wanting to do extracurricular activities, and the whole atmosphere now is just negative. So don't be doing too much. Ladies, don't try to be superheroes and then you about to have a nervous breakdown because the job is wanting too much, your kids is wanting too much, everybody is wanting, and we have the tendency to over compensate. And sometimes if you're a single parent, you're trying to overcompensate for the parent that's not there, and you have to teach them early that you're only one person. And real talk, kids want you. They want you. They want your time. My sons, you guys, still to this day, there's two things my sons still talk about that obviously was very something that they remember and I think cherish a lot. One was when they were really young, I used to make tents for them on Fridays, and they always looked forward to Friday nights because that meant we're free flowing. Fridays was about free flowing. I would make them, I used to call them the ghetto tents, where you got the blankets and I'd have the chairs and the blankets over them, and they could go inside the tents, and I would have blankets and pillows and their favorite items, and they could have hot dogs or hamburgers and snacks. We would have some movies to watch. They could sleep in there overnight, and that was something, that they really, really enjoyed. And I enjoyed it because it gave me some time to just wind down. So make sure that you are making memories with your children. The other thing that my sons, I started doing Christmas, and I know, a lot of people don't do Christmas, and a lot of people say it's a pagan holiday, but I'm still going to talk about it because this is what we did. But for Christmas, I would have them open a few of their gifts, and then the other part of their Christmas gifts would be hidden throughout the house in all sorts of places. And I would make it a scavenger hunt. And I would put on index cards, and I would plan this out a day or two or something like that before Christmas. And I would put on index cards different Christmas type clues. I would and try to make it like a poem or some kind of riddle, right? And it took a little bit of work because my sons are 3 years apart. I did it based on their age and the difficulty of it. But something in the riddle that they would read would lead them to where they need to go. Now, where they would go may be another index card, but eventually one of those index cards is going to get them to where the gift is. And the whole time they're running around all through the house, I am hearing them screaming. If they found the gift, they're screaming because they're trying to figure out what I'm saying. They're running up and down the stairs. They're in the garage. They're all over the place. And that's when I would spend time making Christmas breakfast. And I was like, I'm not going to help. You guys either have to help each other to figure out the clues, or you just have to keep reading and until you find it. And so I swear, no kidding, I started this when they were, I think like 5th or 6th grade. My oldest was I think my oldest might have been in the 5th grade when I started. Do you guys know that they would not get me off the hook with this until I think they were almost in high school? I think they were in high school. Now, by the time they got in high school, it was really hard to do these index cards like in a riddle format because they're older, they're smarter now, and I done tried all the hiding places. I got to where I was putting them in the freezer out in the garage. I have a deep freezer in the garage. And so certain gifts I would have out in the freezer. And so it was, but I tell you, that is one of the most memorable events that my sons had as children. And so in all that you're doing, make memories with your kids, make time to listen. you have to be quiet sometimes, parents. Like, you're not going to know what's going on with your kids. And nowadays, you need to know what's going on. And so when your children open up and start talking about something, shut up. Because if they don't always do a lot of talking, now that they are talking, the last thing you want to do is start, number one, judging, making them feel that this is not a safe place. What you want to do is ask maybe a question that leads them to open up a little bit more, like, wow, that's kind of rough. How did that make you feel? What did you say? How did you respond? What did the teacher say? Why did he do that? Like, and let them keep opening up, because you want to know who your kids are. A lot of us grow up and you don't know who your kids are. You don't know who their friends are. Invite their friends over. There's a dual reason for that, right? One, just because you want them to, you want to know who their friends are and how their friends act and how their friends talk, and so that you can interject at some point if necessary. So there's some reasonings in that. You want to also meet the parents. School is real different now, and sending your kids to just anybody's house is not a great idea, unless you have really gotten to know those parents. And even in knowing them, I suggest that you even visit that home and get a feel. A person's home tells a story. Talking and knowing if there are other people living in that home. If you have a daughter and that home that she's going to, like, you have to be careful, boys or girls. You really need to be mindful of where your daughter is going, and what's that atmosphere over there. You need to know who those other parents are, or they can't go. It's a no. Now, y'all can hang out and have movie time and do all the things, but you need to know the atmosphere, and you need discernment, and you need to be wise. Don't drop your kids off just anywhere because you need a break. You need to figure out how to have a break in your house with your children, and there's a way to do that depending on their age. So, you can, if they have done their homework and they have a favorite movie that they like to watch, they can watch a movie and let them know that you're going to be just in the next room, laying down for a minute or reading a book, just so that you can decompress. If they need you, they can knock on the door. And, kids understand boundaries if you give them boundaries. And teach them that, because you want your children to be able to put boundaries with people as they keep growing up. Teach them about being respectful to adults, and especially respecting themselves, making people respect them, and telling them it's okay to walk away if something feels wrong or disrespectful to who they are and how you have raised them. And make sure that, in closing, make sure, moms and dads, that you are telling your kids how much you love them, how much they mean to you, and tell them what you see in them that's special. The world is going to tell them everything that they are not. You need to be in their ear regularly, telling them, man, you are handsome. I still to this day call my sons handsome, because I do think that they're handsome. There's random times that I just tell my sons I love them. There's random times when I just say why I love them, as big and old as they are now. My sons stand over me. But, I want them to know that they mean a lot to me. And your children need to hear that, because a lot of kids turn into adults that are out here reaching and seeking for validation and acceptance and wanting and thirsting for love. Give them what they need while you're here and while you can, so that they are not out in the world thirsting and lusting for things of the flesh that they didn't get at home as children. All right. I think I have tried to give as much as I can. If I have said something that has resonated and you want me to elaborate a little bit more, go into a little bit more detail on anything, if you're, if you have a desire to go to college, or if you're trying to figure out your finances, I am going to do a segment on finances, so stay tuned for that. It won't be just, for single parents. It will be just for in general. Things that I have learned in regards to finances and how God has taught me how to manage my finances over the years. Sometimes I didn't do it right. Sometimes I did. But at the end, I finally think I've gotten it right. So I want to also talk to you guys about that, because Fridays is about family, faith, and having fun. So I hope this segment has given you some of all of that. A little bit about the faith, a lot of it on the family, and also a little bit of fun. So this is a longer one for a Friday, but I hope that some of this has edified you. And if there's anything that I said that you need more details on, put a comment down below. I'll be happy to elaborate a little bit more on just navigating the waters, because sometimes there's sharks in the waters as you are raising your children, especially as a single parent. You guys be blessed. Love you, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good weekend. All right, you guys. Bye.